And he says, we're going to put the anesthesia through your IV. And by the time we put it into your IV and wheel you from where we are now to the operating room, he said, you're going to be unconscious and under anesthesia. When we got to the operating room, I was still fully awake. I can still hear everything and feel everything going on around me. I started to panic and get real nervous because I'm like, well, I'm still awake. This is really going to hurt, you know? As they're getting ready to cut into me, they pull back. Oh crap, something's really wrong here. And the next thing I remember, Brad, was that I was just floating above my body. But as soon as I watched my heart stop on the table, I went into this profound life review. Without any context, he says, I know how badly you wanted that second chance after your life review. I can offer you that second chance, but you have a responsibility to make sure that if you accept this second chance, the next time you die, you're ready for it. Reluctantly, I accepted his offer. I was back on that, that second story of the house, watching as the doctor shot me with the shot that saved my life.
Well, hello, Bubba Herrick. Welcome to the show. I'm truly honored by you joining me and really looking forward to our conversation. How are you feeling today?
I feel great, Brad. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you.
Oh, hey, I appreciate you joining the show for sure. And I got to tell you, every week we bring you powerful stories about life after death, awakening, and what it means to be human. And if that resonates, you'll love what's coming. Today, I'm joined by Bubba Herrick, who was a Division I pitcher at Jacksonville University, on track for the dream so many young athletes carry, which is college ball and then the pros. And he went in for what everyone told him was a routine surgery, and on the operating table, his heart flatlined. So instead of blackness, Bubba found himself watching his own body from above, and then dropped into a panoramic life review where he felt every moment of his life. Now, what came next was even stranger, a realm more real than here, and a reunion with his late stepfather, Mike, on a basketball court beyond time. Now, in that place, Bubba was offered a second chance at life with a clear charge. The next time you die, you need to be ready for it. Now, since then, Bubba has poured his story into his book, Becoming Ready to Die, From Athlete to Afterlife, The Fight for My Soul and How to Reclaim Yours, and is now a mental performance coach helping athletes, entrepreneurs, and seekers design lives around purpose, flow, and fearless living. Today, we're going to talk about what it really means to become ready to die, not in a morbid way, but in a way that changes how you show up today in your body and in your relationships and in the quiet moments when no one's watching. Bubba, thank you for being here today. Welcome to the show.
Wow, Brad, I've done a decent amount of these podcasts, and that was the best introduction I've ever heard. So I appreciate you setting me up for success here.
Absolutely. I think it's always good to start off on the right foot. It's always, I like to summarize it a bit, and because I've watched many of your recordings and heard your story, and it's so amazing. I just like to get folks all jazzed up and ready for it. This is one to sit down and grab a bowl of popcorn, maybe 2 bowls, right? To go into all these glorious details, not only of what happened in your NDE, but how that changed your life and how it's changing others as well. It's so amazing. Okay, well, hey, that being said, now I would love, to give the microphone and the stage, over to you to share the NDE story, from the beginning, and then all the details you like, and then we'll jump into a rich conversation.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. My near-death experience, like you said, it starts in 2019. It was my freshman year in college as a right-handed pitcher, as a baseball player. And that was my dream. That was my whole life up until that point. So my freshman year, I had been experiencing this elbow pain, but I was a tough guy. I didn't think much about it. It turns out that the elbow pain I felt was actually a torn ligament. It's called the ulnar collateral ligament, UCL in short. And the procedure I was set to get was called Tommy John surgery, which is, for those watching who might not know what Tommy John surgery is, it's one of the most popular surgeries in all of sports. It's a very common procedure where they go in and they replace the ligament, and it's a 12 to 18 month rehabilitation process. It's pretty black and white from what I understood at the time. So I was bummed naturally to get the surgery, but I was pretty optimistic because I had known so many guys who had come back successfully from it. So the day before my surgery, I have this meeting with this nurse. She's asking me all these questions to make sure that I can be operated on. And I'm 19 at the time, so I'm just kind of like yesing her along, like, all right, lady, let's get this over with. And the last question that she asked me, for whatever reason, it just caused this pit in my stomach. I was just uncomfortable. It stopped me in my tracks. And that question was, are you allergic to anything that might complicate the surgery, like anesthesia? And I told her no, because I didn't know the answer to that question. But I left that pre-operation meeting with just a weird feeling about the surgery. So fast forward to the next day, and I'm getting ready to get my surgery. And my surgeon comes in and he gives my mom and I the rundown. And he says, Bubba, we're going to put the anesthesia through your IV. And by the time we put it into your IV and wheel you from where we are now in this pre-operation room to the operating room, he said, you're going to be unconscious and under anesthesia. So he dismisses my mom after that. But before he does so, my mom's all nervous, So I say, Mom, I love you. I'll see you in an hour, just to kind of assure her. And I made sure to say, I'll see you in an hour. So doctor dismisses my mom, puts the anesthesia through my IV, and wheels me to the operating room, just like he said. When we got to the operating room, I was still fully awake, but it was my first time ever getting surgery. So I really didn't know the difference between, what was protocol and what was not. So I didn't say anything. And I was like trying to doze off and all that as well. So I'm in this operating room and I hear all these people around me and they're getting ready to operate on me and they're getting their tools ready and they're confirming with one another that they're ready to operate on me. And by this point, I'm kind of dozing off, but I'm still conscious. Like I can still hear everything and feel everything going on around me. And then I hear them confirm we're ready to operate on this kid. And by that point, when they said that, I started to panic and get real nervous because I'm like, well, I'm still awake. This is really going to hurt, So as they're getting ready to cut into me, they pull back. And when they pull back, the whole energy in the room shifts from, they were lighthearted, they were excited to, help me out and operate on me, to, oh crap, something's really wrong here. And the next thing I remember, Brad, was that I was just floating above my body and I got to see, my body turn all these colors. It went from like a bruised kind of purple to a lifeless blue to then a corpse-like brown/white/gray. There was no life left in that body. And it was like I was watching those colors in my body change from the second story of a house. And what was occurring was on the first story. And it was almost as if the floor of the house were like this thick glass panel separating the two, but it felt so close. I guess it's kind of hard to describe. But as soon as I watched my heart stop on the table, I went into this profound life review, that 360-degree panoramic movie type experience where in my life review, I'm not sure about other people's, but in my specific case, I wasn't just watching this movie unfold from start to finish. I was rewatching my life from start to finish. I was also experiencing it. And I wasn't just experiencing it from my perspective. I was also experiencing it from the perspective of everybody involved in every single scene. So it was very, very real and visceral. And, I got to see in this life review, obviously my whole life, so there's too much to cover there, but I got to see all the moments of my life that I was proud of and all the moments that were very memorable. But Brad, the theme of my life review, for whatever reason, I'm still trying to kind of make sense of this, but for whatever reason, it wasn't very good. It wasn't a good theme. I got to see all the moments of my life that, maybe I experienced trauma that I never healed from. As a child, my dad used to beat my brother and I with a belt, and I got to re-experience those moments. And I got to experience, moments where I had an opportunity to connect with somebody I loved and cared about. Like my grandpa was a Vietnam veteran, and he would always tell me these stories. And while he was telling me these stories, and I was in my teen years, I wouldn't even be listening. I would just be on my phone scrolling. And I got to see that in my life review. And, I got to see just all the types of memories that you wouldn't exactly be proud of. Moments where I could have said, I love you, or I'm sorry, or I could have connected, but I didn't. Instead, I let my own fear kind of win and beat me in that regard. So the life review felt like it lasted forever. And at the end of it, I didn't grow up with really any faith in God or anything like that. But by the end of my life review, I was filled with this regret. I was filled with this disappointment in myself. I had just seen all of these things that I wish I had an opportunity to change, but my heart it wasn't beating. I was dead on the operating table. So there was no time left to fix any of it. And like I said, I didn't really grow up with a faith in God or anything like that. But at the end of my life review, Brad, I was calling out for God. I needed God to be real because I knew what I needed to fix. I didn't want to die that way. And there was this like weird inner battle going on at the time because I didn't have any time left to fix any of it, which just made it tough. It made it tough to kind of face that. So eventually, after calling out for God and begging for this second chance and seeing my life review, I just completely surrendered to the whole thing. I was like, well, this is my fate. This is what happened, and I must move on. And as soon as I surrendered, I was just shuttled into this place that it was bigger and more vast than anything I had ever seen or experienced in my life. And it was like an infinite place. There was no time here. In fact, it almost in a weird way felt like time and I were the same thing. It was very strange and hard to describe, but it was such a shiny place, and there were these refracted combinations of light that formed this one universal color. And it was the most beautiful place I'd ever seen. And there were no senses in this place. I didn't really have sight, or I couldn't hear, I couldn't smell, I couldn't taste, but it was like all of my senses were embodied and happening at the same time. They were all the same. It was just one sense, which was a knowing. If that kind of makes sense. I guess that's kind of hard to conceptualize, but it was just this knowing, this inner knowing that this place that I was in was my home. And I was supposed to be dead, but I felt more alive in this place than I'd ever felt in my entire life. And I'm in this place for what feels like an eternity. And then this strange figure appears. And it's without transition, by the way. I think that's an important detail to mention, is this strange figure just appears like rapidly and, passes me a basketball. And as soon as I got past the basketball, I knew the figure was my stepfather. His name was Mike. And it's funny, the basketball game that we were playing was actually a recreation of a real moment that we had on Earth. And it showed in my life review. And for brief context, my dad was very hard and disciplinary, and I was afraid of my dad growing up. And I didn't have a great relationship with my dad growing up. But Mike, my stepdad, was the complete opposite. So he just meant so much to me. So I think that the fact he showed up in this experience was because he was so special to me. So we played this basketball game, and it's the most beautiful game. It's like fun and loving, and there's just so much light energy, like a positive energy in the air when we're playing this basketball game. And at the end of the game, though, Mike, his tone shifts, and we go from this loving, competitive, fun energy to he's kind of very stern, like fatherly almost. And he basically says to me, there were no verbal communication. Everything was almost this, like I said, this knowing, this, I guess for lack of a better term, like this telepathic type of communication. And without any context, he says, Bubba, I know how badly you wanted that second chance after your life review. And he says, I've been sent here to give you an offer. And he says, I can offer you that second chance, but if you do, you have a great purpose. If you accept the second chance, rather, you have a great purpose that you need to serve. And he says, you have a responsibility to make sure that if you accept a second chance, the next time you die, you're ready for it. And, that place felt like my home, so I didn't want to leave. And if in some weird way, it didn't feel like I had much of a choice, even though he gave me a choice. It just felt like I knew what I needed to do. So reluctantly, I accepted his offer, and he disappeared and vanished. And I was back on that, that second story of the house, watching as the doctor shot me with the shot that saved my life. And I woke up and immediately, Brad, I was so thrown off by the whole thing that I just woke up violently and I just started like punching the doctors because it was such an incredible and shocking and insane experience. And I was just like, what in the world just happened?
Wow, that's crazy. Have you ever done this before where you've woken up swinging like after a nightmare or
No,
something? Is this a repeatable pattern?
no.
Okay, well, that's a good thing. So, I got a couple questions in there. So you didn't know you had an allergic reaction to the anesthesia, but you certainly found out. And now you certainly know if you ever have to have more surgery, that's the first thing to share. What's crazy is when you were having that experience and going in there and you said, I'm still awake. What's going on? Well, that's because your body was actually dying already and your soul and consciousness was already leaving, because I've talked to a lot of folks with out of body experiences and NDEs and you were consciously in your soul and out of your body while you were being rolled into there. And that's why you thought, hey, what are you doing? Why are you cutting into me? I'm awake. But you'd already separated, it feels like to me.
Yeah.
So I would say, that's amazing because that's what then, flatline, boom, you go to the other side and you do the life review and you have that whole experience and then you get sent back. You can't get sent back to a dead body. So obviously your body's going to have to be, recovered. What was the shot they gave you that counteracted the allergy?
That's a good question. I don't know the technical term for it, but I believe it was adrenaline.
Yeah, right. Some epinephrine or some sort of adrenaline, sort of something or other that counteracted the allergic reaction. Well, thank goodness.
Yeah.
All right. So they did that and you were able to come back. And then did you remember what happened right away? Did this come to you later or was it just right there?
Yeah. So I did remember what happened right away. And as soon as I was, I guess, a little bit more stable, I shared the whole experience with my mom right away without, like, I did not believe it. I believed it right away. And it's funny, Brad, as soon as I shared it with my mom, she shut it down immediately. And then I shut it down. I was like, no way this is possible. But then a nurse overheard what I shared with my mom. And she just butt in a little bit. And she was like, ma'am, those are near-death experiences. I've seen them a lot. You should look into them. And I always kind of kept that in the back of my mind. I was like, I should look into them.
Yeah, and you have since, and we're going to get into that part of the story too.
Sure.
So that's really cool when you actually have a nurse or maybe a doctor, but probably more often a nurse that has seen this before and then has researched it and has found the NDEs, the near-death experiences, are very common. And, years ago, long time ago, people didn't talk about them at all because it wasn't common knowledge. It certainly is today with the internet. Raymond Moody, 50 years ago, actually writing the book, Life After Life, and then all those that have followed. And then certainly that's why podcasts like this are here today. And people love hearing these stories. They want to know about what's going on the other side. So thank you for that. And I really loved what I heard in there when you were talking to your stepdad about a do-over. It's a mulligan, I guess, if you play golf, right? And the notion you're reflecting on the fact that you had some great moments in your life review. You had others that you did want to do the do-over. And I liked what you said. It's moments when I didn't say I love you, and I didn't sort of feel that and share that. And so maybe you can talk about that more. How did that affect you?
Yeah, I mean, on the other side of my NDE, what I've learned the most that matters to me, and I think why we're here, is to love and learn. Love and learn, but primarily love. And for myself, my heart has always been so big, but I think as a kid, I had so much pride and ego, especially being an athlete, that it was always really hard for me to show my heart and to share my heart. And, after, I think that's part of the reason I died full of regret is because I just had so much love to give that I didn't give it.
Yeah. And I think that's common for everybody, there's no user manual when you're born into this life. You don't know these sorts of things. So that's, again, why a lot of people actually do watch the podcast to learn more from others' experiences. And you were unfortunate and yet fortunate enough to die and to go to the other side and have that experience, but to get the second chance. And so that's, I think, where we can go next is, how this really affected you. And ultimately, you captured all this in a book that's now available to folks. So what was that experience after you left the hospital and walked back into the life, did you immediately know, okay, cool, I got a do-over, a mulligan here, I'm going to really hit this one straight down the fairway? Or were you sort of all over the map for a moment?
Yeah, I was all over the map for a long moment. For maybe 3 to 5 years after my experience, it took me 3 years to even bring it up that it happened and accept it and embrace it. So I guess I'll backtrack. After I woke up on the table and I shared that with my mom, and she kind of like shut it down and I kind of shut it down. It I didn't talk about it. I didn't think about it. I didn't even accept it as reality for the next 3 years until one day I shared it with my best friend. And that at that point, Brad, is when it became real. I shared it with my best friend and he basically said, "Hey man, you got a second chance at life. Like you need to, Mike said the next time you die, you need to be ready for it. So why don't you start living that way? Why don't you start acting that way?" And that set me on this long, long journey of integration. I think grief too, just really processing the trauma, not just from that experience, but from my childhood and losing my identity as a baseball player because I ended up retiring from baseball after this experience. And all of that process, that grievance process led me to selling everything I had, moving into my car and traveling the country just to kind of give myself the time and space to learn who I was, because with this near death experience, the old me really had to die. The old version of myself had to die, and I feel like I had to kind of give myself that time to do so.
Yeah, the old you had to die because of doing the do-over, but then you start with kind of a blank slate.
Right.
It's like, what do you do now? I got to go kind of figure this out from the ground up.
Right.
So it's amazing that you didn't just fall back into society and get led around by the nose with all the interrupts we receive every single day.
Yeah.
But you literally had sort of the guts and the discipline to remove yourself from that, to quiet your life, quiet yourself, sell your things, go on your own on a mission to find and maybe create the new Bubba. It kind of feels like that.
Yeah, absolutely, Brad. That's exactly what it was. It was a stripping down of everything that I used to be, and then a building up, as you said, from completely bare.
Nice. Now, as I said earlier, I'm familiar with your story, and I love this next part of the story. It shows the discipline that you probably figured out in life, maybe coming off the challenge you had, with your parents growing up and then going into baseball and exceeding in that so well and knowing the process of that you said, I need to go capture this thing in a written, form. And so it kind of feels like you took off in your car and you went to an NDE experience, but in that also an extended journey, which is so amazing. Now it's like, okay, I need to capture this ultimately in the book that you have today. But the crazy process you did this is just inspiring. It's very unique. I'd love to hear that again.
Yeah. So once I admitted to myself that this was all real and that, I had to actually, the next time I died, I had to be ready for it. A big part of that process for me was writing. I was given a journal by my stepmom one day to just in case. She said, you don't have to use it or anything. So I would just when I first started journaling, I would make fun of journaling in the journal. I would be like, oh, this is stupid. I don't need to do this. And over time, that became my way of just dealing with the overwhelming emotions that associated with this experience and, just healing. So initially my plan was I'm just going to journal, and then journaling eventually turned into, okay, maybe I'll write a book. And then writing a book that turned into, I need to give this thing everything I have because the next time I die, I need to be ready for it. And what if this is the last chance I get to do this, So a big part of why I ended up moving into my car to write this book was because there was an IONS conference out there in Arizona last year, 2024? And I was writing my book at that time, and that was the last thing I needed to conclude in my healing journey. Was I needed to meet other near-death experiencers. I needed to hear other stories and connect and feel seen and heard, because that integration process for myself was very lonely. I couldn't find anybody to relate to because they are such unique experiences. So Yeah, that's why I decided to sell everything I had. And while I was living in my car, it was very, very regimented for the writing of the book. I'd living in a car, you've got to be very stealth with how you move about because it's not exactly something that it's kind of frowned upon. I don't know if it's legal in many places as well. So I guess I'm kind of breaking the law, but yeah, so that was kind of the whole reason I moved into the car, and the process was very involved while I was living in the car of just writing.
Yeah, and for others, IANDS, as you mentioned earlier, is the International Association of Near-Death Studies, right? In
Yeah.
2024, it was, I think, in Scottsdale. This last 2025 was in Chicago. Next year is in Seattle for folks that actually would like to attend as well. Now, some of those details you kind of skipped over a little
Sure.
bit.
Yeah.
You're in your hometown, and you're kind of telling your buddy and his dad, right? What's going on here, that you're selling everything and you're moving into the car. You got your car outfitted. You got a fridge in there. You got this
Yeah.
in there. You know you're going to live in that thing. You probably don't know how long yet, right?
Right.
But I thought what was really cool about the story is that your process of sort of getting up, doing this, how you actually figured out where you would stay each night and kind of do the car sort of stealth mode thing. And then the afternoons, how you would make money to survive along the way and so forth. You might want to share a few of those fun details.
Yeah, absolutely. So my main focus at that time was writing the book. So while sleeping in the car, you got, like you said, you got to be really stealthy. So I would wake up and I would center my entire day around being able to write. So I'd wake up really early at 5 a.m. because you got to make sure that nobody sees that you're sleeping in your car overnight in these overnight places, so you can go back and park there again. So I'd wake up at 5 a.m. and I would do this concept called the morning pages by Julia Cameron in her book. It's called The Artist's Way, where the first thing you do when you wake up is write 3 pages of whatever comes out. So I would do that every single morning. And a lot of my creative process was very physical for me because obviously I was an athlete. So I found that I had to get more in my body than in my head. So after my morning pages, I would go and work out and train and just kind of get connected to my body. And then I'd write for 3 or 4 hours. And then after that, I would go and, like you said, deliver Uber Eats to support myself. And then I would find Cracker Barrels, I would find Walmarts, I'd find hotel parking lots, or even some places in nature or on the side of the road to sleep. And I did that for 7 months because I just felt like I had to. It just felt like the purpose that I was sent back to live out.
That's amazing. And that's that discipline I was talking about before. How in the world do you do that 7 days a week for 7 months? If you multiply that out, you're going to get a lot of consecutive days there for sure.
Thank you.
And to be able to do that, some folks do automatic writing. They just kind of get a pen and paper and they just sort of see what happens. I don't know if that's how it felt to you or not, but I guess you got a little bit out each day. How did you know when you were done?
That's a good question, Brad. I knew I was done. It was just an intuition. It was just like, oh, okay, I finally made peace with this experience and I'm ready to share it.
Yeah, cool. And then with that, did you have to find sort of an author to sort of, edit with you, to adjust it, to clean it up?
Yeah, so I was lucky enough, Brad, to have grown up with Scott Mann. He's a New York Times bestselling author and a kind of world-renowned speaker. I played baseball with his son growing up. So he kind of coached me through the whole process. And then he had an editor that he works very closely with called Chris Wetzel is his name. He's a former Army infantryman, actually. And Chris Wetzel was the guy who kind of helped me work on each draft. There was 9 drafts of the book. Each one was a complete rewrite. So I failed a lot, but Chris really he gave me nice support that I needed to finish it.
Nice. Yeah, it's good to get help. I mean, you get your thoughts captured and you need someone to kind of organize it in a flow that the rest of the world can kind of, move through it in a graceful way and really get a lot out of it. So what would you say, how did you benefit from writing it?
I benefited from writing it just because it forced me to face the reality of my experience every single day. And it just gave me a lot of repetitions and being honest with myself about my past and who I truly am, that, behind all the armor I built to protect myself as a child and after my near-death experience.
Do you think that the honesty part was the most important? Because, everybody in their lives, they have a persona and an image to sort of maintain, and they're kind of hiding a lot of stuff, and they have to deal with that, and you got to carry that load around. But, if you can live a life where you're just honest about everything, you have nothing to hide, you can probably sleep better. I would think in this experience, when you go to the book, you gotta decide, am I all in or not?
Right. That's exactly it. I mean, the honesty thing is, even to this day, that it just, like you said, it's the only way I find that I can find peace.
Yeah, I know. That's amazing. So now I would say I would turn it around for those that go to Amazon and pick it up.
Mhm.
And you can imagine them picking the book up and reading it, and they're reading your life story, but they're overlaying it on top of their life story and going, oh my God, this is what I'm feeling too, and this is what's happening, and this might help. How do you think this can really help folks, in what sort of ways?
I think it can help folks in a lot of ways, Brad. The whole first part of the book is about my life review, my near-death experience, and mostly what happened during my near-death experience. I think the majority of it was my life review. And even though folks who might not have had a near-death experience and haven't experienced what a life review is, even though they might not understand, I think each specific individual segment of the life review specifically talks about my childhood traumas, how my mom was an alcoholic and my dad used to beat us. And I think those things are very relatable to people. And then throughout the rest of the book, I talk about how I've overcome addiction and how I've overcome depression and anxiety and loneliness. And I think the book, regardless of near-death experience or not, I think it's just very, very, very relatable and human. I think it is really, really human.
Yeah, and I know people will, as they do read these, they totally take the pieces out that apply to them, and it's amazingly transformative to them as well. You never know how many lives that you're actually going to affect. And it's interesting when you were having the life review about your dad as he would hit you, with a belt, that you saw it from your perspective again, but then you saw it from his perspective.
I did, yeah. And it was very interesting to see it from his perspective, because as a child, I always hated him for it, and I always was like, Dad is evil and he hates us. And that's how I interpreted it as a kid. But in my life review, I got to see it from his perspective. And his perspective was actually that he believed he was doing the right thing in disciplining us. He was disciplining us in the only way that he knew how. Now, whether I agree with that or not now, I don't, and I don't justify that behavior or defend it. But I will say that experiencing it from his perspective allowed me to forgive him because his intentions were pure.
Right. Interesting that you use that F word, the forgive word, that F word, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting word, because a lot of folks get hung up on that. And if they're super mad at somebody else and they don't forgive, they're the ones kind of carrying the burden. And they find when they
Sure.
do forgive that they release it. And it's really, it's an internal thing, forgiving. It's not an external thing.
Right. Absolutely. And in forgiving my dad, our relationship today is I'd say better than it has been ever.
Ah, that's good. Oh, and I would imagine, since you poured your heart and all your truth into this book, that your parents and family members and friends have all read it. And so you're an open book now.
Yeah. And on one hand, that was terrifying because I was like, no way, they can't know these things about me and how I feel about them and all of that. But I'll tell you what, Brad, it's really healed a lot of our family trauma, and we still got issues just like every other family, but it's done a lot for us that I really didn't expect it to do.
Yeah. And I hear that your mom read the book 5 times. And again, she loves it, and it's bringing you guys closer together. So it's cathartic for you, for her, and then for all the folks that pick it up.
Yeah. And it, again, what it's done really is it's helped us all tell the truth to each other. And there's nothing that's not communicated about because everything is on the table now.
That is really an interesting perspective. If you're the one opening up and being completely honest about everything, the world's kind of a mirror. You smile at it, it smiles back. Maybe if you are super honest with the world, maybe it's honest back with you, and you can get beyond misunderstandings and, artificial images of yourself or others, and really get back to that reason that you came back for that second try here, which is to never hesitate to say, I love you.
Exactly. And it's a practice. I'm not perfect for sure, but it's definitely something I do my best to do every day, because I've noticed that honesty begets honesty, like you said.
Yeah, I love that. Now, let's talk about the title of the book. It might frighten some.
Sure.
Becoming Ready to Die. It's like, what? Wait, what? Who? Now, I know it's the book isn't about focusing on the dying part. It's actually focusing on the living part, right? Mm-hmm. And so I think the rest of the title in there is quite good. And you get into the book in the first few pages and so forth, and you realize that. But so tell me, like, how did you come up with the title, itself, and then how would you characterize the whole book with its messages?
Yeah, so I came up with I didn't really even come up with the title. It just hit me one day while I was writing, and I was like, "Oh, that's a cool title." It's really not much deeper than that. It was very simple, and I was like, "Okay, that's what I'm going to roll with." Now, what the message is in the book is that our deepest fear, what I find, is death. I think our nervous system is programmed to protect us from death. I think that is just what we fear the most. And I think that when it really boils down to is that if we could somehow relinquish that fear of death, and that's impossible to do as a finite state of being in the world, I think it's impossible to, quote, get there. But I think it's the pursuit of overcoming the fear of death is how we live the best life that we can live. And it's even facing micro fears on an everyday basis. So the book is my journey from living afraid of death and traumatized and lonely and afraid and just not satisfied with my life to now, which is I'm still all of those things, except for I know that fear of death is what's holding me back, and I'm ready to attack it instead of run away from it like I used to.
And I suppose now, if you have a knowing of the other side, you probably most folks don't have a fear of death anymore. In fact, they don't really even call it death anymore. That's kind of a word that has a lot of baggage. It's more of a transition.
Yeah. No, I can say with confidence that in my experience, I no longer fear death, and I don't think it's anything to fear.
Yeah, a lot of folks say, when we get to the other side, as we transition over, kind of that's home, and that's our eternal self, and we chose to live this very short, brief physical manifestation. Bubba, Brad, these are temporary sort of things
Sure.
for experience purposes. But it's really on the other side. So when you finally know that, and then you go, okay, but while I'm here, I'm really going to enjoy this much more. I'm going to be more honest. I'm going to be more loving. I'm not going to take everything so seriously. Although I am going to have discipline and process and things like that really allow me to make sure I stay focused and not distracted, I think those things are fair. And the rest of the title of your book is The Fight for My Soul. That's you. Good for you.
Yes.
And how to reclaim yours, everybody else's, right? So what would you say is maybe a couple of, sort of inspirational notions for others of how to reclaim their soul? What should they change in their daily life?
Well, Brad, I think like we've already talked about, the first step is honesty. I think we got to be honest about where we're at, who we are, what we want. And if we don't know those things, I think that if we want to get to the place where we can answer those questions with honesty, we have to just keep the promises that we've made to ourselves about what we want and do what we say we're going to do. So I think that's the first step. And then like you said too, Brad, I think our soul is comprised more of there's a fighting spirit in our soul, but I think there's also a fun spirit in our soul. And I think a lot of folks, to keep their soul intact, we ought to play more, myself included. I'm the first person that needs to take my own advice here, but I think we ought to play more and joke more. And like you said, not take life so seriously, because the soul it's not meant to be imprisoned, and it's not meant to be held down, and it's not meant to have all these limits, at least in my belief. And I think being serious is it's a good thing, and we should be focused and we should have discipline. And at the same time, we also are only here for a certain amount of time, and none of us know how long that is. And I think that having fun is just as important as fighting for our soul. It's the fighting spirit, but it's also the playful spirit, and keeping that childlike wonder, because at the end of the day, I think this is all just a game.
Yeah, I agree. And I liked what you said about childlike wonder. It feels like the children born into this have it all figured out. And then unfortunately, society beats it out of them. And so now they have to be all serious and pay the bills and, taxes and all the crazy stuff. So no, I think you have to have a reminder. Well, it's, it's up to folks to kind of figure this out. They read books. they watch podcasts, they have their own experiences, and hopefully they find a balance in life, and they have respect and they reflect on the fact that they're an eternal soul, but they're living a temporary human experience. That would seem safe. But there are a lot of folks that need help doing that. Now, I know that's what you're doing now, right? You are in the world in many different ways with your hand out to help folks in this way.
Yeah, I do. I mean, the simplest way of saying it, with like you said, it kind of terrifies people sometimes, but I help people become ready to die. And what I mean by that is I help people live out their fullest potential. And I primarily help athletes, entrepreneurs, and spiritual seekers, just because I'm all three of those things. And I think I want to help people just like myself. And the way I do that, Brad, is less of a coach and more of a teammate. I think a lot of coaches tend to talk down to folks, and that's not the way that I approach it. I'm more of a teammate. It's more of an equal playing field. And the medium through which I help folks do that is flow state. It is the most optimal state of human consciousness, and I help folks access flow state on a consistent basis and design their lives around it, so that way they can reach that optimal state of consciousness on a regular basis.
I love this part of this. And I know you've talked in the past about addiction, and you help folks with addiction, and in many different things you could be addicted to. But the fact is you say, if you could get focused on a flow state, you can literally pretty quickly take yourself away from an addiction. And so explain more about what flow state is, maybe some examples of how you work with folks with that.
Flow state, like I said, is the most optimal state of human consciousness. It's those states of total absorption and rapt attention where action and awareness merge, where we almost seemingly forget that anything outside of this present moment exists. It is the eternal state. It is the most spiritual state of consciousness that there is. And how I got into this, I guess I'll backtrack for a second. How I got into this was in my near-death experience. When I came back from my near-death experience, I eventually came to the conclusion that I had felt that feeling before. I just didn't know where. And I found that it was as an athlete, when I would pitch, I would feel flow state. And that's how I kind of attributed and made that connection from my near-death experience to now helping people access flow state.
Got it. Okay. Well, in the world of athletes, it's oftentimes called in the zone, I guess,
Sure.
right? You see Michael Jordan, shooting, 3-pointers from everywhere, and they all fall in. He himself in one video is like, I don't know how this is happening, right? It's a total, I know that's going back a few years. There's more recent guys, Steph Curry, and doing the same. But yeah, flow state, in the zone, it's amazing because, it's also like what you said. It's like Eckhart Tolle's book, The Power of Now.
Right.
It's like there really is only now.
Right.
If you're worried about something tomorrow, that future event, that doesn't exist. And if you're stressed about something that happened in the past, well, that doesn't exist either. There is only the now. So
Right.
when you think about that, because when you're heading down, when you're throwing a pitch or you're heading down the court to shoot a basket, you'd better not be thinking about, your checking account balance or,
Right. Right.
your car, the dent you got in your car the day before.
Right.
No, it's the now. That all there is the now. Be in the flow, be in the zone. So you're telling me that you can take this concept to folks and help them. Do you have an example without naming names that you could share as an example?
Oh, yeah, I've got plenty of examples. And by the way, I should say too, this doesn't just apply to athletes. I just use those examples because I primarily work with athletes right now. I haven't had many spiritual seekers or entrepreneurs just yet reach out to me to work. But an example would be, I have a lot of athletes that I work with right now who deal with performance anxiety. Specifically in baseball. Baseball is a little bit of a slower sport. So there's a lot of time to get in your head in between pitches and in between innings. And it's just an extended period of time that you can just start thinking easily. So what I help them do is I help them notice those thoughts, but I help them not identify with those thoughts and hold on to the thoughts and let them go. So that way they can act from their body naturally. They can let go and trust the preparation that they've prepared themselves to perform, and get out of their heads. Because when we're in our heads, we're trying to control things and we're thinking ourselves into deep rabbit holes that we forget what our intentions are. And that's not just in sports. I think that's in our daily lives as well. I think we can really get pulled away from what's important to us.
Oh yeah, I agree. Now, when you're in the bottom of the ninth and you got a no-hitter going, I imagine every single pitch you got crazy thoughts going in your head.
Sure.
And it's like, how do you you acknowledge that thought and then you let it go.
Hmm.
And then somehow you get yourself back in the flow, in the zone, in the now, and you literally deal with it as truly one pitch at a time.
Right.
And that is it. And it is not about a no-hitter. And it's just about my arm throwing this ball in this moment, in this spot, in the catcher's
Right.
glove. Right. And so that is like super help for the athletes. What's an example of how you would help a non-athlete in just daily life where they're also in their head kind of messing up their world needlessly?
For the average person who's not an athlete, I think the first place I would start is identifying or taking in information on their habits. I think our habits can share a lot about how we feel on the inside. What do we do with our time? So that's the first place I would address with somebody who's not an athlete is let's look at your habits and then let's take those habits and compare them to what you say you want, like what your goals are. You know what I mean? And then let's see if those things are in alignment. Do you have the habits of a person who says they want to experience higher levels of consciousness? Do you have the habits of a person who says that they want to have this amount of money or they want to experience this type of love with another person? So I would say it really is more of a way of being in the world rather than a flip that you switch on. Flow state is what I'm talking about. I think flow state is more of a way of being in the world. It's a lifestyle thing more than it is like a light switch.
Right. And it would take practice, right?
Sure.
Because,
Oh my gosh.
yeah. Because, you wouldn't get it right away and you wouldn't really, it's like everything else is like closed loop feedback. If I do this, what happens? And if I do that, what happens? But I would fall back into my old, ingrained practices for a while, then have to catch myself and so on. So I would imagine you work with folks repeatedly and maybe even exercises and so forth too, so they can really almost reprogram their subconscious mind with new capabilities.
That's exactly what it is, Brad. And that's actually one of the pillars that I address with every person that I work with is developing a relationship to practice because flow state, it's not a finite thing. It's not something that has a start point and an end point, much like the universe. I don't know if it has a start point and an end point, but the present moment is eternal. And I think that developing a relationship to practice is developing a commitment to the process, the infinite process that is what's unfolding right in front of us at all, in all moments, at every moment, in every time. So just developing a relationship and a commitment to the process of improving rather than looking for a specific result and doing it because it's what you want to do, not because it's what you have to do.
Right. And you know what? It's interesting because it's clear to you because you died and you came back that you do have a second chance and you're on your second life here, like a cat with 9 lives, Bubba's got 2. So that's pretty cool. You have, you're taking it seriously and you've had that direct knowing experience. Now, the rest of the world watching this and then reading your book, guess what? They also get a second chance, don't they?
Absolutely.
Right? Because they're going to read this and listen to this. And if they take it to heart, and by the way, there's so much more detail in the book that you're not going to get in the podcast.
Sure.
Right? So Amazon.com/Bubba's book. We'll put the link in the description. The link is in the description. Yeah. All right. So that's pretty cool. So, for folks to get to know you even better, I have this special section that I call Heart's First Whisper. And what it is questions that I've prepackaged just for you, Bubba. And the idea is you just answer them super quick with your heart and no thoughts or mind is involved. Sound good?
Sounds great, Brad. Let's do it.
All righty. Well, here's question number 1. If you could go back and sit with 19-year-old you the night before surgery, what is the one sentence your heart would whisper into his ear?
You're going to be okay.
Yeah, exactly. Now that you know, you're going to be okay. But let me ask you this. When you were going into surgery, did you think you were going to be okay or were you slightly nervous?
I was nervous. Yeah, I was nervous for sure.
Ah, good. Historically, I've done surgery for a long time ago, some random sort of thing. And it's just like, you get the anesthesia, you have the surgery, you wake up sometime and it's just complete erasure. There's just that whole period is just gone. Unfortunately, I didn't have the NDE and my heart, didn't stop. I guess maybe that's fortunate, but,
right.
but that's pretty cool. Yeah. So you were still nervous. So if you could whisper in your ear, you say, don't worry about a thing. And I think that might be what you would whisper in your own ear right now about the rest of your life, right, Bubba? It's like, don't worry about a thing. It's like you got the right focus now and everything is going to be fine until the day that you ultimately transition, which is the very title of your book. So that's pretty cool. All
Yeah,
right.
absolutely.
Well, that takes us into question number 2. In your life review, you saw all the missed chances to love better. What is one way you are very intentionally choosing love now so that it won't be a regret on your next review?
Right now, Brad, more than ever, I am choosing to presently and consciously listen more in my relationships. I think that was something I did not do the first time, and that was a big reason why I wish I had that second chance. Was because I didn't have the egolessness to not interject or not rebuttal or defend myself. So I'm just kind of listening to understand now.
Got it. I love that. And that's an important lesson for everyone to jot down right now on that notepad in front of them is exactly that. Listen, it's funny. It's like oftentimes if you have the ego, like you're talking about, before they're even done making their comment or asking their question, you just blurt right out, oh, I know more than you. And here's
Right.
the answer to the universe and so on. But no, if you do wait and listen to everything they say, not only will they feel heard, which is effectively saying, I love you to that person, right? But also it gives you a moment to actually reflect in a less personal way about me and a more, objective way about sort of everyone, we are all one as it is. So I like that. That's great advice. So I hope folks have their pen and paper out and they're jotting down some notes here. Well, that takes us to number 3, which is you saw your father's discipline from his perspective and your stepdad, Mike's, love from his. How has this changed what it means to you to be a man who loves well?
That's a deep question there, Brad. I don't know if I have a one sentence answer for that. It takes strength to share your struggles as a man, and that's something I never did before. But now I realize that that's how you build trust, especially with other men, the men that I coach, the men that I teach and help. So I think there's a balance between what my dad did and being hard and disciplinary and holding people accountable. I think there's a better way to go about that, but the principles are true. I believe in accountability and discipline and hard work and resilience. I believe in that side of it, but I also believe in the nurturing side and listening and being empathetic and having compassion. So now what I'm doing differently is I'm kind of combining those two approaches, those two separate principles, rather, I would say. And that I believe is true love.
Yeah, I like that. I think you were maybe one side of the coin before,
Right.
and now you're kind of two sides of the coin. And you reflect with both sides, and both have a different meaning and purpose and objective, and are used in different scenarios.
Right.
But now you're sort of full figured with both sides of the coin, and you know just when to use them. That's amazing. I love that. So lessons learned.
Thank you.
And you're on your second chance now, so you're using that coin well. Number 4, when you think of the diamond-like realm beyond time, what is one quality from that place that you're most committed to carrying into this life and in your relationships here?
Wow. Unconditional love, that feeling, unconditional love, unwavering, committed, loyal. That's what that place felt like. It felt like it wasn't going to leave me, even if I did something wrong and if I made a mistake or whatever. And I think that's what I'm carrying into my relationships today is I'm very hard on myself. I hold myself to a high standard. I hold the people around me to a high standard, but I understand that I fall short and they fall short, and that sometimes you just need somebody to pick you up and not tear you down, not beat you down. So unconditional love is what I took from that place for sure.
Nice. And by the way, oftentimes folks think unconditional love means not judging other people, right? And
Right.
and yourself, you have to remember not to always have unconditional love for yourself too,
Right.
Yeah, because if you're around someone that's got super negative energy and they are not good for you, you can still have unconditional love for their soul and yet choose the unconditional love for yourself would mean I don't want to be in proximity to them, really. And
Absolutely.
that's okay. That's okay in the world. Well, this brings us into number 5. If someone listening feels buried in regret for wasted years, addictions, or ways they've hurt people, what is the very first small act of courage you'd invite them to take today?
Apologize to yourself and to the people involved for your wrongdoings. And I would encourage you to accept and recognize that the only thing you can do moving forward is tell the truth and make a very conscious effort to do better, because that regret might not go anywhere unless you do something about it for the rest of your life.
Yeah, I love that. It goes back to the honesty thing again. To be honest with yourself and honest with others and let the chips fall where they may,
Right.
as the expression goes. And you know what's funny in that is you might influence others to be more honest with you, and you might influence some people and in a way where they turn away from you. But it could be that their frequency really isn't aligned with yours anyway in that case. And so maybe that's okay, you know, but it always seems like honesty seems to be kind of the right move forward. When we're on the other side and we're eternal souls and we're just completely one and all connected, there is no hiding anything, right?
Sure.
We come to this side here and we think we're separate and we have the ability to hide things, and that really sort of turns against us in many ways.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
All right. Well, it takes us to number 6. You've been given a second chance with a clear responsibility. What is one promise you've made to your soul about how you live this time?
I will always remain humble to God, no matter what worldly things I have, no matter what labels I have, no matter what achievements I get. My commitment is to the God that gave me the second chance, and that's going to be unwavering, and I'll accept whatever consequences that might bring, because I know that my soul is safe with God.
Yes, that's brilliant. I think that message is another one folks can jot down. Whenever you're questioning something in life, you know, you kind of return there. Return inside, you know,
Right.
Cut off the noise of the outside. Well, go inside and kind of repeat some of those phrases and you'll probably do good. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, hey, this takes us to number 7, our final question. When your time finally does come again and you stand in that review one more time, what do you hope your soul is able to say about how you used this second chance?
My hope is that I have this life review again, if that happens, and I will feel proud instead of feel regret. I think I want to look back and feel ready to move on and not begging for a second chance. Almost like I fought hard and I did all the work I needed to do, and I served all the purposes that I needed to serve, and now I can finally rest.
Love it. Yeah, and that goes back to the title of your book, you know, Becoming Ready to Die. To me, it's almost like preparing yourself for your life review. You know,
Right,
it's kind of
yeah.
like, that's the same sort of thing, right? Because that's the idea.
Absolutely, Brad. Yeah, I couldn't have said that better myself.
Yeah, cool. All right. Well, so I tell you, we would definitely want folks to find the book. Tell us more about how to find it, what form it's in, and what's coming next.
Yeah, so it's on Amazon in paperback and hardcover, and ebook actually right now. The audiobook is on its way out. I believe that should be done at the end of January, early February, barring some, freak incident where something comes up. But yeah, and then you can even purchase it through my website. It's bubbaherrick.com. You can find the links on my Instagram. You can find them on my LinkedIn, anywhere that books are sold, or actually anywhere that a link is able to be placed. Sorry about that. That was wrong. But Amazon is where you can buy it.
Yeah. Okay, good. And then how do they best reach out to you? You have the website and social media, email, various things. What is it you'd like to recommend for contact?
Yeah, I'd say definitely shoot me an email. But you can find my contact information all on my website. So just go to bubbaherrick.com and that will direct you where you need to go to reach out to me. And I'd love to hear from folks watching this. Just feedback from this interview would be awesome.
Beautiful. All right. And the link is in the description. So just go down there, click that, and go right to his website. And the link is in there for the book also. If you click that, it'll take you directly there. But I got to tell you, if you also go to thebradpetersonshow.com and submit your name in there and mention Bubba Herrick, I am going to send out 5 free books myself. So for the first 5 folks that get in there and put their name in, that is it. Now, what you have to do is this: your name and your address and your phone number. Those things are all required for me to click on Amazon and ship it to you. Okay. I do this all the time. I love the books that the folks that I have on in the podcast, they write. They're so meaningful and so useful. And I want to just prime the pump here and get the first 5 out the door. Okay. So you heard it here. Okay, Bubba. And I know
Wow,
they're not going to be
thank you,
signed by
Brad.
Bubba, but they're going to come from his heart.
Thank you for doing that, Brad. I would love that. Let me know what you need from me to make that happen.
Oh, that's cool. I'm just going straight to Amazon. I know exactly where the book is, and I'll not only send it off to the folks. I'll ask each of them to write a review. Maybe that's what I'll ask for in return, right?
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
that's pretty fair.
that's very fair. Yeah, I'd appreciate that for whoever receives those books.
Cool. Well, hey, as we wrap things up, Bubba, do you have any sort of summary or last message you'd like to share?
I just want to say thank you for the work that you're putting out in the world, and for those watching. I think that it's people like us, more so like you guys, Brad, and the folks watching, who are really doing amazing things in the world. So I just encourage, if there's anything I can do to help you, Brad, or those watching, please reach out and just keep doing what you're doing. I love it and I appreciate it. And I'm a consumer of your work, and it helps me out a lot. So I just want to say thank you for having me on, and thank you for doing what you're doing, because it's truly changing people's lives.
Well, yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I thank you. You are the guest and the keynote speaker today for sure. And bringing your message to these folks is certainly what I try to do each and every week. And I think your message today, the overall message, has been heartfelt and solid for the audience here. So thank you, Bubba.
Thank you, Brad.
Thank you for not only surviving what happened on the operating table, but for doing the much harder thing, which is coming back here, and letting it change you. You've shown us that a life review isn't just something that happens when our heart stops. It's something we can start doing now, looking honestly at how we show up, where we withhold love, where pride keeps us from saying, I'm sorry, or I love you, and then actually changing course while there is still time on the clock, the first time around. Where your story is a reminder that the afterlife is not just curiosity, it's a mirror. It reflects back the kind of love we're practicing here moment by moment. And becoming ready to die isn't about obsessing over death, it's about living in such a way that when that moment comes, we're not filled with regret, but we are sitting with a quiet yes. And for the viewers, if Bubba's journey spoke to you, I highly recommend his book. And remember, I'm going to send the first 5 folks a free one. Becoming Ready to Die, From Athlete to Afterlife, The Fight for My Soul and How to Reclaim Yours. So support his work, share this conversation with someone who's afraid and who could really benefit from the light that the book actually provides. So thank you once again, Bubba. I really appreciate your time here.
Absolutely, Brad. Thank you.
And until next time, keep questioning, exploring, and keep remembering you are more than the body, more than the story, and more than this world. Take care, everyone, and bye for now.